All right, let's get started. So before we start off, I just want to introduce Rawan one more time. So Rawan is a mentorship program geared for and aimed to help Uyghur youth. We just very recently started it. It's all youth-led, so everybody who is leading it is a part of our community, is youth, for lack of a better word. And we've all been through that journey of college applications and just academic careers in general. So we want to kind of help lead the next generation or other youth as well. We've done a webinar in the past. We're doing our mentorship program, which you can still apply to be in. But that is kind of where we're at right now. So before we begin, just to familiarize ourselves with you guys, we can do some quick introductions. My name is Lala. I am a sophomore studying government and public policy at Cornell University.
Hi guys, I'm Mikhail. I'm a sophomore at the University of Washington studying computer science and informatics.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Niyara. I graduated from MIT and studied chemical engineering and am currently working as a management consultant in New York City.
Okay, so for today, we're gonna do a few things. We're gonna go over what a resume is, why it's important. That may seem obvious, but just to really nail it in for you guys. And then we're gonna go by section within a resume and give you guys a breakdown of what you should be including, tips and tricks, and what a resume should look like. We'll be giving examples as well. After that, we'll go into a very brief discussion about websites and LinkedIn's. Website portfolios is something that you can do as you advance further into your career. And LinkedIn's are also something you can start thinking about now. So we'll get into that. And then finally, at the very end, we'll do breakout room reviews. So if you have a resume prepared that you want one of us to look over, you can stay a little bit longer for that. And you can get a little personalized review of your own resume where we can give you specific tips and tricks and guidance on your own resume that you may have already. So just to start it off, what is a resume? So a resume, a formal definition of resume, is a document created and used to present your background, skills, and accomplishments. And this is what a job or an internship, or sometimes colleges will look at to get a brief overview and an idea of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and who you are. And once most of you may be in high school right now, so it's not as prevalent in your lives. But once you advance into college and you're beginning to look at jobs or summer internships or other opportunities, this is something that you will need to have. Resumes are different from something else called CVs. Resumes have to be just one page. And it's basically a very condensed list of everything you're doing, all your skills, any awards or any other extracurricular or outside of school activities that you may be a part of. And they're very important because almost every single job application, internship application, or other opportunity applications will ask for your resume.
Yeah, so now to go into the different parts of a resume. So all resumes differ from one another, but they tend to have these 6 sections in particular. And so the first section is the header, which is the name, phone number, email, and possibly address. And then you get into education, experience, leadership and activities, awards and recognitions, and skills and interests. And so on the right is an example of my resume. So I have 5 out of 6 sections, but on mine I did include a awards and recognitions section, although I do highly recommend it. And so, yeah, now we're going to go into each of these in a little more detail.
Yeah, we can start off with the education. So most important thing is to highlight the school that you go to. So the name of it and the location of it would be good to provide on that part, as well as your graduation date. So potential employers or potential colleges can see when you can graduate. And also to include is your degree. Although a bunch of you guys will be in high school, so most of you guys will just put like high school diploma. But if your school offers like specializations or you're pursuing honors in your degree, it would be good to put that as well as your GPA. If it's above like a 3.5, that would be a good thing to highlight on your resume as well. And the last thing to include in this section is your relevant coursework. So I am a computer science major, so I'm pursuing degree like roles in tech and like software engineering. So all of the coursework that I put down are the most important in a software engineering job. Like I didn't put down English or history or any of those other like wonderful classes that I took in the past. So in this section, I would highly suggest for you to put like your AP classes or classes um, that are most relevant in like the field that you want to major in or work in.
So the next section would be your experience section. So as a high schooler or maybe early college student, your experience isn't going to be as fleshed out. You're not going to have multiple jobs or multiple internship experiences that you can really list. So you're going to be thinking about your most influential extracurricular experiences that you could talk about. So this can range from maybe part-time jobs that you've had, clubs that you are in school, any internships that you might have had over the summer, outside organizations, or even volunteer work. And for this section, even as a high schooler, you want to be thinking, what can make you stand out? Because anybody can be a member in a club, but only one person can be president. So if you have a leadership role, that's something that you want to highlight in your experience section. Even as a high schooler, having leadership role in a club at school is still something that's worth saying and worth noting, especially at your level. So if you're president of National Honor Society, for example, that can be top of your list. You want to go down that list with most impactful and most recent to maybe less impactful and less recent. So newest to oldest. And when you're kind of bulleting things under the activities that you have, so you'll list an activity that you've done and list at least 3 bullets under that, think about quantitative metrics to measure your success. So rather than saying, I recruited a lot of people into this club that I organized, you can say, I recruited this many number of people into this club. I raised this much money for this fundraiser or for this club. Or if you're doing like social media work as a part of an organization, then you can say, I garnered this many views and this many interactions on this website or social media page. And that goes for volunteer work as well. How many hours did you work? Those are all things that if you list will give the recruiter a much more tangible, visual explanation to how much you committed and how much you were valuable to this organization or to this activity that you did.
Yeah, so now to move on to the leadership and activity section. This section can have some overlap with experience, but as long as you have perhaps like a club or extracurricular in one or the other, then you're set. But some possible things you can include in this section are clubs. And so if you took a leadership position in NHS, the National Honor Society, that's definitely something great to include. It can be any club from anything STEM related, so math team, to anything humanities or art related. Even if there's like fun clubs, like a game club, I would definitely encourage you to include that as well. When it comes to extracurriculars, anything sports, music, volunteering related, I would include those. And especially if any of these extracurriculars you've done consistently over many years, that's something great to show and shows that you're definitely able to stick with something over time. And then the last thing you can possibly include is external projects. And so if you over the summer or in your free time like to do art and have an art portfolio together, have a cool summer science project, or even start your own YouTube channel, those are all things you can include in the leadership and activity section. And so below is an example of what my leadership and activity section looked like in high school. So I put National Honor Society and math team in there. Yeah.
Sweet. Next up, we got awards and recognitions. So in this section, I would say for you to like highlight and list your impressive awards. This can include like placement in national regional competitions such as HOSA, DECA, any of these other like scenarios where you like compete with a bunch of other students at like a high stage so that these companies or schools can see like your highest achievements. But along with that, you could also like list like small competitions as well, like first place in like a local spelling bee or first place in a writing competition. It's up to you what you want to put in this section and what you think is a high achievement or a high award. Like moving on to that, you can also list like scholarships or grants. Most of you guys will probably not have this yet, but it'll be good to see like what things you guys earn in the future. And I would say like to be more brief in this section so that you can highlight as much awards as you can that could possibly differentiate you from other students and other competitors when it comes to applying to college or getting a job.
Another thing you can note here is sometimes awards and competitions can be a very daunting thing to tackle, especially when in high school. The competitive environment can be very hard to manage. So online, if you look, there's always very small competitions or contests for writing, poetry, or like coding, these things that you can look into online. So if you're looking for more smaller competitions to just bulk up your resume or bulk up your application, these are things that you can do. So online, there'll be like small poetry contests or like nationwide like small coding competitions. And these are things that you need to actively seek out and do that might be less competitive than in comparison to maybe like worldwide or nationwide competitions, but still look good on your resume if you feel like you might be lacking a little bit in this area. So that brings us to the very bottom of your resume, which would be your skills and interests area. So this is more meant to bring more dimension and personality to your resume. So here, you're not being as serious. You're not listing bullet points of the activities you've done. You're kind of talking about these minor things that don't necessarily have a big influence on your academic career, but are still things you want to mention. So for example, any languages you might speak. So I'm fluent in Uyghur and English. I'm learning Turkish, so maybe that's something that I would want to add in my skills section so you can see I have fluent Uyghur. And also you want to add keywords and key skills that recruiters look for. So a lot of recruiters look for proficiency with Google Suite or Figma or Microsoft Word, Excel, Office, and in the government sphere, LexisNexis. So these are all things that I'm going to add on my resume so it can ping recruiters or, grab their eyes and grab their attention to let them know that this is a key skill, a key technical thing that I can do. And then also, have an interest section. This gives more personality and more dimension to who you are beyond this piece of paper, beyond this list of activities that you can do. And it gives you a way to show your creativity, shows that beyond just academics, you have all of these other interests and hobbies that you can do. So for example, I put violin, poetry, traditional art, like all of these things. And I'm very involved in advocacy. So that's something that I also put. But you can also put like maybe a TV show that you're really interested in, that you really like to watch. These are all things that maybe you can strike up conversation with during an interview. So don't be afraid to be creative and express yourself a little bit more in this section.
Yeah, adding on to that, if you're aiming for a more technical resume, I would suggest for you to like put down like languages that you've learned or like technical languages that you've learned like Java, Python, SQL, C, C++, things like that, software and tools, libraries and frameworks, other things like that. And don't be afraid to like, put stuff that you don't feel 100% confident in. Like I have a couple languages that have only like coded like one word or one line in, and I put that on my resume. So feel free to like fluff yourself up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to like summarize, so presented here are each of the 6 sections and bullet points on general what to include. Just to kind of go over the tips and tricks for each. For the header, you include your name and contact info, but we would recommend if your resume is going to someone in the US, do not include a photo of yourself. Some countries in Europe recommend including a photo on your resume, but generally in the US, no photo is needed. For education, tips and tricks there is definitely to highlight relevant coursework as discussed previously. And then for experience, leadership, and activities, as mentioned, list them in reverse chronological order, with the most recent being first, and then the next one would be the old, and then the last one would be the oldest. And then use specific examples and numbers to highlight what you did. I'll go into that a little more on the next slide. For awards and recognitions, definitely perhaps include some criteria if that's made available. And so for a certain award or recognition, who generally receives it? How selective is it? Is there a value for the award or scholarship that you received? Any information such as that kind of highlights the award and the importance of you receiving it. And then for skills and interest, as mentioned, highlight skills that are applicable, and then be true for the interest. It's a great conversation starter. And for me, my interest that always started conversations was me watching Shark Tank. Definitely anyone who's interested in business and whoever saw that, there's definitely like 10-minute conversations that resulted from it. So that was always good for interviews.
Yeah, and just make sure you can exaggerate, but definitely don't lie. Like if you're asked a question during an interview about a show you really like, but you haven't really watched it, that might put you in a tight spot. So just be careful with that.
Yeah, and so for the experience and leadership and activity sections, the way you would typically format the bullet points is you would have an action verb, context, and then impact. And so the action verbs are exactly what it means, action verbs that show you kind of did something or some initiative. The context is both qualitative and quantitative, which just provides some background. And then the impact is what was the result of what you did. And so, for example, at the very bottom here, you can say organized weekly math team study sessions with all 5 members to prepare for competitions, which helped us to win 3 out of 4 competitions that year. And so organized is the action verb. The context here kind of shows that what you did was math team study sessions, and then you said 5 members to provide a qualitative context to who was involved in the math team. And then the last section here is impact. So by hosting those sessions, you helped win 75% of the competitions that year. And so with these aspects, definitely be a little selfish and kind of show what you did in particular and not necessarily what your team did. So what was the impact of what you did? Yeah, and then following that, there's 4 more tips and tricks, which I call the 4 C's. And so first one is concise. So definitely use bullet points. I know that's generally not favorable in a lot of writing assignments, but for your resume, it's definitely highly recommended. And then for each experience or activity, do somewhere between 1 to 3 bullet points, so that there's not too many words for one specific experience or activity. The next C is clear. In your resume, don't try to ramble, try to keep everything as neat and as concise as possible. Write about what you did and not what your team did, as I just mentioned, and also be honest and stay true to what's included in your resume. The next C is consistent. So make sure for the resume that the formatting is consistent so that there's a general way of spacing, of indenting. Don't use different fonts, kind of stick to one font and kind of stay with the same grammar tense usage. So you can do all the prior experiences in past tense and maybe current ones in present, but don't try to switch those up. And then by making it look consistent, that helps with the next C, which is clean. Anyone who receives a resume, the first thing they do is kind of look to see that everything looks nice before they read the content. So that's always important. And then also a very important thing to remember about resumes is that they should typically only be 1 page. So try to condense all the information into 1 page only and try not to go over that. And then some tools you can use for creating your resume are Word and Google Docs. Those are the most common that I've seen, but I'm sure there's also other resources you can use for resumes.
Sweet. Yeah, moving on. This is something that's that you could take the next step in, especially if you have more of a technical background, but don't be afraid if you don't know how to make one or make a website or don't have the means to. But I'll just give you a little demo of what it is. So it's basically like a place to showcase your work and give a little more detail about yourself. As you can see, this is my homepage. I have like a little blurbs about what I do. Like I have some research. I link to like my research professor. I link to my jobs of being a teaching assistant and a research assistant, as well as like my passions of being like an ambassador or a mentor at both Rawan and another club that I'm at. Um, and if you scroll down, I can like you can even like showcase other things. Like I have some publications. Um, I can showcase on my website in case if like anybody wants to stumbles upon them and wants to read them, that's there for them. I also have links to my other social media websites, including my email, my GitHub, and my LinkedIn. We'll go over more about what LinkedIn is and how to get started on that in a little bit. But I don't have my like very personal social media websites linked on there because I kind of want to keep my private life and my like work life separate. Um, yeah. So like there's also different sections on my website. If you go over to my CV, which is basically a resume, but like more expanded. On here I have like the liberty to like explain everything that I've done without that 1 page limit that you usually have when making a resume. Yeah, so I have like all my jobs that I've done, all my different experiences, along with like different languages that I've learned and different interests. So yeah, I find it very useful because you have another way of like sharing what you've done and like and the jobs that you've done without that limit. And I also have like a project section. So like this is just like a small subsection of what I've like made during my free time and during like final projects in different various classes. So this is like a good place to demo your work, especially if you have anybody who's like curious or like recruiters are like curious in like what you've made or they want to actually like see what you've made. They can easily like click on any of one of those projects, find more about it, and even like download the code and run it on their own computers. Yeah. Moving on to to LinkedIn. Just to give you, if you haven't heard of LinkedIn before, it's basically the social media platform for finding a job. Um, So this is like a little bit more professional compared to like Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook for that matter. Here it's basically like an extension of your resume, but online. So like on my homepage, I put down like where I'm working and my bio, which is like what I'm pursuing. Like I'm a current computer science engineering and an Allen School ambassador at the University of Washington, Seattle. So that little bio there, that's what a lot of people are going to see when they like browse or search up for like different things on LinkedIn. So if you want to catch the eye of anyone, you want to put whatever you think there. As well as like you can list your experiences there. I went a little lazy and only put like one sentence, but I would advise you guys to put a lot more to describe what you actually did. So in case like anybody stumbles upon your LinkedIn, right, they can like get the full picture of what you've been doing. I also suggest for you guys to like post important things that you've done before. Like my most recent post is like like showing my recent research showcase. And I posted that because if anybody was like interested in my research or had more questions, they could easily like find that and like DM me and ask me more questions. Um, so LinkedIn is a very powerful tool to help you network and find people in various industries and areas that you want to pursue in your career. And I suggest you guys to get started on this sooner rather than later.
And we'll go more into LinkedIn and website portfolios in the future. Maybe that's another avenue of workshops, online workshops that we can do. So if you're feeling like this was too brief of an explanation, don't worry, that is to come. So before we end today, we just wanted to remind you guys to sign up for the Rawan monthly newsletter. Our first one went out just this month. Thank you, Nigara. Thank you, Kesat, for working so hard on getting that sent out. We are always highlighting scholarships, summer opportunities, and testing dates, and so much more that you can be aware of. So as we mentioned, competitions and tests and scholarships to put in your awards and recognition section can always be hard to do. But every monthly newsletter, we send out scholarships that you can apply to with deadlines coming up. We are doing that work for you and sending it to you. Same with summer opportunities and internship applications that you can apply for. We also have some news that can keep you up to date. And just exclusive examples like resume examples that you might want to have access to. This all gets sent out in our monthly newsletter. You can sign up with the link in our Instagram bio. So we just wanted to put that on your guys' radar and make you aware of this opportunity.
Yeah, so that concludes the bulk of our presentation on the resume. If there's any questions, happy to answer now. If you don't feel comfortable sharing with the other participants, then feel free to reach out to your Rawan mentor or contact us if you have any questions. But we'll move on to the next part with breakout rooms, if there's no questions.
Okay. So I guess this will give you guys like 2 or 3 minutes if you stay, we will break you guys out into rooms with one of us, and we can look over any resume that you have. So it's very personalized. I'll put you in a breakout room. But otherwise, you guys are free to go. Okay, I can start the breakout rooms right now then.